What's up and welcome back to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes and I'm joined by the new face of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Do you think Michael B. Jordan watches his anime in subbed or dubbed?
Oh, don't start that. Do not start that because I fucking guarantee he's a dumb boy.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
100%
Nitro Rifle, Andy Cortez.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with it.
What's wrong with dub?
Nothing
man?
wrong with
Come
dub.
on.
People want to
My
be
hero
cool.
kicks ass at dub.
Let me
dude.
tell you about Yu Yu Hakusho, one of the dopest dubs you can watch.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm subs for life, but I don't begrudge a dub if that's what you need to watch it.
I don't mind it.
I don't
dub.
begrudge
I
the
don't
dub,
mind it.
everybody.
I don't mind
Heard
a
it
dub.
straight from the mouth. Timur Hussein, thank you so much for joining us today. Tim, I'm really excited that you're here for a bunch of reasons that we're going to get to in just a little bit. Let me get through the rigmarole. Of course, this is Kinda Funny Gamescast, where each and every week we get together to talk about video games and all the things that we love about them. You can get it on youtube.com/kindafunny games or roosterteeth.com. You could also get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny Gamescast, and we'll be right there for you. If you want to get the show ad-free and watch it live as it's being recorded, just like Futon, Risehawk, and Awayne07, then you got to go to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, just like our Patreon producers, Delaney Twining and Tripod Plus. We appreciate all of you so very, very much. If you don't have a buck to toss our way, that's cool. If you're on the Epic Game Store, please use our Epic creator code KindaFunny, and at no extra cost to you, we get money. In the chat, Jeremy Don says, no Andy intro. I did a quick one. I threw it in there, but just in case anyone's unclear, I'm Tim, this is Blessing, that's Tam,
Hi.
and that's Andy. Okay, we have
yeah, I
Barrett
thought
on
you
the
called
ones
to
and
me.
twos.
You're not
got
going to call him the
Nitro
Nitro Rifle,
Yeah.
rootin', tootin', shooting.
Texas Street.
3-point
Hold on. Let's try.
Street Latino Heat.
Give him the whole thing from the start.
I don't know. The Texas Street Latino Heat clicking heads and ripping them to shreds.
Headshot.
The 3-point
globe
shooting.
trotting.
The
Globe
globe
trotting,
trotting. The
Headshotting.
gobstopping. The headshotting.
Gobstopping.
The
Rootin'
the rootin' tootin' shooting.
3-point shooting.
3-point
Three-point
shooting.
shooting.
And dunk
And that
contest
verse,
winning.
I have to clarify, that verse didn't even exist until Nick just kept shoehorning in rootin' tootin'. Him and Greg kept shoehorning in rootin' tootin'. And I said, well, it's just all alone. Rhyme it with 3-point shooting.
Yeah,
I love it.
That makes sense, Sam, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you know I'm such a sniper from out deep.
Sure, the
you know?
Steph Curry of this.
I know,
of this,
exactly. Of the games industry, best shooter in the games industry.
A shoot in the games industry, everybody.
The big claim.
Andy Cortez, the Nitro Rifle. Today we're brought to you by Shady Rays and Honey, but I'll tell you all about that later. Now that the rigmarole is over, I want to personally thank Timur Hussein for being the greatest person I have ever met in my life.
Wow.
He's been so good to me for many, many years.
Wow.
But last week he gifted me something very special. He came up to my desk and he gave me a 2-scale diorama of the Toretto household from Fast and Furious that is now next to my
That's
desk.
what that
Seen-
was from. Like, I mean, I know what it is, but I didn't know where it came from.
Yeah, that was me.
It was
So
Tam.
we were in LA with it was me, Lucy, James, and Elise Willems, friends of the show. And Elise was telling me that she saw like a range of incredibly boring, like miniature, like scale figures and stuff like that. And one of them was the Toretto household. And I saw it and I was like, this is the most plain thing I have ever. It's just a replica. There's no like cool colors. There's no like special cars in there. It's just the backyard. And or the front yard, one of them. And I was like, I have to get that for Tim. I need to get that for Tim.
Appreciate the hell out of it.
Yes.
But that was only the second nicest thing you did for me
Oh.
that
What?
week
Whoa.
because you told me something very special.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, you know what? I'm going to Super Nintendo World.
Yeah.
And I was infinitely jealous of you immediately. But then you're like, and I'm going to interview Miyamoto.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I was like, dude, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, I got to do the most selfish thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I
It wasn't
need
selfish at all.
to ask you to get my copy of Super Mario All-Stars signed. My very first video game I ever owned.
Yeah.
And Tam came through.
No way.
Let's go.
No
Super
way.
Let's
Mario
go.
All-Stars signed by Miyamoto. He even did a little Mario,
Oh my God.
a Mario in the
That's
signature. This is my very first video game I ever owned. Some would say it's the greatest video game cartridge of all time, and they wouldn't be wrong. Includes every 2D Mario from that era. Fantastic stuff.
That's the coolest
And now it's
shit
emblazoned
ever.
with Miyamoto's autograph. So thank you so much for that.
Wow.
That is truly incredible.
That is amazing, dude.
It's really cool.
It's
Like,
freaking cool.
That's so badass.
I got there and like I went before my interview and found the person who was like handling everything and immediately was like, before we talk about this interview, I need to clarify that I need to get something signed. Like, please, can I get something signed? Can you check if it's okay? Like, I don't want to upset him, but I want to make sure that we can get something signed. And he was like, all right, I'll go and have a look. And he was like, he's probably only going to... They came back eventually and they were like, all right, he'll sign stuff. He probably only signed one thing. And I was like, that's fine. Your thing is what I was there for. And I was like, I'll get that signed. And we went in and like did the whole interview. And at the end, I was like, please, can you sign this? And I told him the story. I was like, this is for my friend Tim. This is the first cartridge he bought. This is actual cartridge from childhood. And Miyamoto was very impressed. And he was like, he did say, I'm honored.
I love it.
And then he
so
wrote it down,
amazing.
yeah. And then afterwards, I was like, you want to sign my Switch? And then he signed my white Switch
That's awesome.
controller. So I've just like got that as well. But yeah, he also stole your Sharpie. So
Tim,
I love it.
the next vehicle you get, that's the hood ornament.
Oh yeah, just exactly right on the
you
front
just
there.
put that in the front.
Also, how dope is this little like
That's
awesome
really
acrylic
cool,
thing
yeah.
that I got?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't remember
Really
where
cool.
I got it. I just
That's
googled
real
it, but it's
cool.
cool. Very
He's
cool.
yeah, he was very nice as well.
I mean, so I want to start the show there. Like, you got to hang out with Miyamoto in
Yeah.
Super Nintendo World.
It was-
Give me the highlights of the Miyamoto side, and then also Nintendo World.
It was so we went there. So I got a call from them and they were like, "Hey, would you like to come to Nintendo World and interview Miyamoto?" And I was like, "Damn, I would really want to, but also I was incredibly busy at that time." And I was like, "It hurts to do this, but I think I'm going to have to send someone else instead." We had someone who was already in LA and also going to Nintendo World that day to be there. And I was like, okay, appreciate it. Can we have this person interview him instead? And they were like, Mr. Miyamoto has requested your presence. And I was like,
Can we just take that in for a sec?
I think that is like the PR saying, like, you know, you have to do this, but also there is a chance now that somehow Miyamoto knows who I was before I met him.
I
And,
love
like,
that. When you told me that, it like broke my brain. Where I'm like, you were the single coolest
It
person
is
on the planet besides
terrifying
Miyamoto.
because he doesn't have an online presence that we know of.
That
Which
we
means,
know of.
and which means that Miyamoto is on Twitter.
He's the one replying to KindaFunny. He's like, "Fuck the Vita, bro. We use where it's at."
Was he Nebelian? Will we ever know?
Maybe he was Nibel. But like, and that means like, there's a good chance he knows me through my work on GameSpot or here, or whatever it may be. Also could be Twitter. And if it's Twitter, that is terrifying because I am wilding out on Twitter.
just
I'm just
wish you happy birthday every other day.
yeah. I'm just doing bullshit on Twitter.
Mr. Miyamoto wishes you a happy birthday again.
Yeah, it's like the wrong day again. It's like, oh, fucking L from Miyamoto there. But yeah, so I was like, okay, I can't turn this down. And also like I was on a bunch of deadlines as well at that time. I was like, okay.
Trying to get out of the app. Sorry.
That was like a scary like fucking, like the thing moment. So I was like, okay, cool. It was like a overnight trip basically. I went down there. They had like a opening night event, and I didn't go to that because I was too tired and I had stuff to do. Next day, woke up, went over, and basically had the perfect experience that you can have in Nintendo World. So I went to Universal last year after Game Awards. It was like me, Lucy, Skill Up, and a few Jake Baldino and Gerard, the completionist, and we went and we had basically a guy that one of Gerard's friends kind of take us around. So I went back this time, and he was the first person I saw, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" So I was like, "Oh shit, I know someone here already who's gonna help me through this stuff." Went to Nintendo World, and it was incredible. Like, Nintendo World is... I'm not one of those theme park freaks that gets really into theme parks. Like, I love going to Disneyland because I like Dole Whip. That's why I go to Disneyland. I don't give a shit about any of the rest of it. I love being there with my friends, getting Dole Whip. I'll ride some of the rides, awesome, whatever. So I went to Universal. I've been to Universal. That was my first time going to Universal. No, that was second time, sorry. Last time I went, it was like I went to on a few things that I was there for the Mummy, mainly.
Of course.
They didn't have a lot of the Mummy. They had a lot of Tom Cruise era Mummy stuff. I was like, all right, whatever. But
Dark Universe, never forget.
I was impressed by I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I was talking to, who was I talking to? Was it Blessing? No, I was talking to Barrett earlier. And Universal is like whatever for me. Like, it's a bunch of like, themed
Weird
areas.
IP.
Weird IP that are mushed together, but like you go into Simpsons World and Springfield or whatever it's called, and you've got a bunch of like buildings that are like, oh, Moe's Tavern or this kind of thing. You go in there and it's all very Simpsons like. You come out and you're just on a street, like you're on a street on planet Earth in America, whatever.
That's Hollywood, baby.
And exactly, and it's the same with like Harry Potter land or whatever it's called. Hogwarts? I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. I forget the exact.
Yeah, you go there and it's like, oh, this is, Gringotts or whatever. And like some of the streets look good, but ultimately, like you turn around and you can still see like Joe Schmo trying to eat a pretzel over there, and it's like whatever. And you can see other rides and stuff like that. The difference with Mario Land is it basically is built in a fishbowl. And you walk in and you walk through a pipe, and there's clearly some sort of like laser across the pipe that you can't see, because when you walk through, it like trips the laser and it plays the sound of you going down the pipe to like signify you are now going into the Mushroom Kingdom.
God.
You walk through there and you walk
I'm
like,
not even there
and
right
and you basically walk through the castle. So like you're walking through the castle.
Is Peach's Castle music playing?
Yes, it was like cycling through a bunch of music. I can't remember if Peach, but it was definitely playing music from Mario 64 or that era. And it's got like the mural of Peach up top. It's got the paintings, Mario 64 paintings, and it's doing the like.
Are they LED screen? Like
they're ripple affecting, and they're like going
God.
between areas and characters and that kind of stuff.
Damn,
so you're like,
dude.
okay, this is sick.
I'm going
then-
in, guys.
and
I'm
then-
going to make the jump.
Can you not like? Can you shut the fuck up? No, okay. I'm like, is it super hard to not get emotional? Because like when I go to theme parks and I see everybody super happy, it's like we're all here for one reason because we love this thing, and I always get teary eyed. Like this is like the one place where there is like just 100% happiness. Joy. Like little kids, like maybe little kids shit on the ground. You're like, I fucking care. Why
That
you
kid's
shit on the
happy,
ground?
though.
Yeah, you're right.
That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
Like it was weirdly emotional for me because I mean I imagine it'll be exact the same for you guys and anyone who like has loved Mario in their lifetime. Nintendo, there's little Nintendo things there. Like it's primarily Nintendo World, but if you look close enough, you will see a Pikmin like just somewhere.
Lakers head. Get stoked.
Yeah. But yeah, it was quite emotional because when I walked out of the castle and was like there, it's like I said, it's in a fishbowl. So you
Kind of like how they build the Star Wars land.
yeah,
right?
like it's
Very
everywhere.
enclosed.
You feel like you're there. If you look around, it's just Mario stuff. You can't see Harry Potter World or Mummy Ride or like the toilets are over there. You are in like the Mushroom Kingdom, and it's quite. What I really loved about it. It's very manageable. Like it's not. It's I did pretty much everything in a day. But obviously, I had an ideal experience where it was a very small group of people and there was no other like public people there. But it was just like very doable. Like it felt like a hub area where you walk that way, you're in something, you walk that way, something. The whole thing about it is like it's got one ride, which is the Mario Kart ride. It's like an AR thing where you jump in, you're sitting in a cart, you've got a steering wheel, you don't actually steer. It's on I believe it's called a dark ride, where you're basically on rails. But they put an AR headset on you, and when you look around, you will see the other racers. Like other people are also in carts, but you're not playing against them. You look around and you might see like a Koopa or like Daisy or whoever just like coming by, and then you've got buttons on your steering wheel, which when you press it will fire a shell. And the point of the game is you try and hit as many of the other racers as you can because they drop coins, and you collect the coins, and at the end it will tell you whether you on Team Mario collectively have got enough coins to beat Team Bowser. Very simple, fun. I did it like twice in a row, and it was
like the mask gets dirty.
No, it was fine. It was like okay. It didn't. It fit really snugly as well, so it was comfortable. And it's basically like a tour through all of the most iconic like Mario Kart levels, and ends on Rainbow Road and that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. But that's just like it's got one ride, which is like cool. You get that done, and then you're just basically left to explore the world. And it's got a very game design-esque kind of setup to it, where there's loads of things in the park that you can kind of like discover and find. And one of the things that they kind of nickel and dime you on is you get this like strap, like a watch thing, which you buy. It's like $30, and I got a Toad one, I think it was. You get different themed ones, and it basically you connect it to your app, and it keeps track of everything you do. You take it away with you, you come back again, and you add on to it. And it's got stuff like if you find the yellow blocks, you hit it with your arm with the actual watch on, and it will make the coin noise and add those coins to your actual watch. So you're racking up coins. It's got like in the app there's stickers which are unlocked by doing achievements.
Classic Nintendo.
Which will be
Love
like,
the
oh,
stickers.
yeah, the stickers are. It's exactly like the stickers in the games. Like it's that
Catch
kind of
is
stuff.
like the online sucks. Like the connectivity's there, very bad. Wi-Fi's terrible. You see people glitching around as they walk around.
But yeah, you do like these little challenges and stuff like that. And over time, you like if you do a challenge here, you complete this one challenge. You can like there's 4 actual activities, and they range from like flip the colors and make them all match, and you got to hit loads of buttons. And if you do all of them and complete them, you unlock 4 coins. At which point you can go to I think it's one of the Koopa's castles and like challenge them. Koopa Kids Castle and challenge them. That's like fun. But then there's stuff like, the sticker might be, look for the airship. And you go upstairs, you find the telescope thing, periscope,
cool.
and look around, and it's not always there. So like you got to like really look for it and come back and hope that you see it. And when you do it, it kind of logs that you've done it, and it will add that sticker as an achievement. There's these really cool things which we found right at the end where just around they're like these weird like emblems on the wall. And we were like, what the hell is this? And then the guy who we were with, that friend of ours was like, touch your watch to it. So we touch our watch to it, and then this looks like a normal wall, like just a straight up stone wall. Touch our watch to it, and then like an 8-bit Mario appeared above it, and like it played
like
like an
Odyssey.
unlock. It was so weird. I was like, because you can't tell there's something there. Once you know it's there, you can see the faint outline of whatever tool they're using to like make it come in there, bulbs or whatever. But like that's everywhere as well. So then I was like, oh shit, now I've got to walk everywhere again and find these damn things so I can like
That's cool.
rack them up. That was really cool. The gift shop has got some like exclusive stuff in there. I really love the cafe. Or they clearly put in a lot of work into making the food good and also making it Mario themed. And I had the perfect experience where it was like, because we were there as like a preview thing, everything was free. And we could just basically line up, get the food over and over again. So I got to not taste, but like I had a limited selection because I can't eat everything on it. But like the people I was with basically got one of everything, photographed it and tried it. And everything they said they ate they were like, this is really good. Everything I ate was really good. So like it was fun just sitting down, and like they got these little mushroom plates, and you take the thing off and you eat out of it. And it was really cute. But yeah, top to bottom, like I highly recommend going to Nintendo World. I think probably wait until it's calmed down a bit, because right now the lines are probably crazy, and there's probably so many people there that you won't get to do anything. But even if you go there and just look around, it's impressive. And the thing that I interviewed Miyamoto after this, and we talked a lot about the interviews up on GameSpot.com. We talked a lot about his achievements and that kind of stuff. And like I wrote the interview up, and the one thing the angle that I went for is like Miyamoto is one of perhaps the most influential, like iconic, legendary creators of our time, right? And he's achieved so many different things to the point where it's kind of impressive that he can find new ways to, new frontiers to conquer. And like theme parks is one of them. Like it's wild that he's completed so many like achievements in games that he now is in theme parks and movies, like that kind of stuff. And we always talk about how influential Mario is to us, and like some people have been lucky enough to tell him to his face. This is probably the first time he can stand in a place enveloped by his creation and see the impact it has on people around him. Like I was like walking around and seeing people like joyously playing with things and like being just like euphoric at what they were seeing. Like they'd hear a sound and just be like overwhelmed with happiness, or they spot a Goomba like walking somewhere on a castle rampart, and it would like overwhelm them, and they'd be like so excited in the way that we were. And I was like, I'm feeling like quite emotional seeing that happen. Imagine being the person that created it, and like standing there and being like, I can visibly and tangibly see the impact I've had on people's lives, because the things that I've made have inspired this love and warmth towards that. And it's like, I think it must be like crazy for him right now. And like, it's going to get even wilder because the movie's going to come out and then that's going to happen. It was just like fascinating to talk to him about it. And he was very humble about the whole thing. And he was like, yeah, I'm very happy. And he was like, I love the people at Universal. They put in the work and it was really cool. And yeah, it's just, I think it's one of the few times that I imagine he's been humbled by something, like the impact of something. I definitely was. And I was like, it's weird because you also have like a sense of pride.
Yeah.
Because you're walking around,
This
you're
is
like,
ours, man.
yeah, this is ours. This is our space.
Get fucked, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it's like, where it's like you look around and you see some people who are just like, you can tell that they probably aren't invested in the same level that you are, but there's like a bond that you have
You just
with
look at me
everyone.
like, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know how
You
many
can play the
times-
real Mario.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
dude's never played Mario Maker.
But yeah, it's just like one of those moments, and they're so rare. They're so rare outside of the games we play, where you play a game and a really good game will reinforce how good it feels to be into video games, right? Like I play games like the From games or Street Fighters or Mario games, and I finish playing them, or like I'm playing them. The thing I come away with is always like, damn, I love being a gamer, or I love that games exist and they're constantly wowing me. It's so rare to be able to go outside of that sphere and just be like, I described it as, do you remember when you were a kid and you were in love with something, like be it Mario, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, the first time you saw like a Mario t-shirt, right?
yeah.
And you were like, this exists outside the TV? Like that kind of feeling? Because I remember being like that with, I think it was like Dragon Ball stuff, where when I saw my first like Dragon Ball t-shirt, it became my priority to have it, because I never knew that it existed outside of like the TV cartoons that I watched.
I mean,
It
when I
was
saw
wild.
the Mario movie at Blockbuster,
Yeah.
like me and Kevin lost our minds.
Yeah.
We're like, there is a movie, and we were kids. We
Yeah.
loved it. We were stupid, but like it was that moment of like, there's more of this? It's
Yeah.
not just video games. Like
That's how I felt with the Sonic cartoon.
to all of
What
it.
the fuck? How?
Yeah.
Whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it feels. Where like you go there and you're like, this is crazy. Like if I felt like that again. Like I remember being like, I'm all about this. I'm all about getting that Power Rangers or whatever it may be. So like that, it kind of overwhelms you, and it sounds quite like saccharine, and it was to a large degree. Like you have to let it envelop you and whisk you away, and not be cynical. And it's difficult to do that in this day and age. And I'm quite a cynical person anyway, just because years of being in this industry and reviewing games and the turnover, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, I'm just going to let myself get swept away by this. And it was like really, really enjoyable and really, really heartwarming and kind of affirming in a lot of ways. So
Just gonna take some shrooms and see.
Yeah,
where it
exactly.
takes
See
me.
what happens.
see what happens. But yeah, that was the whole Nintendo Land is great. And then we spoke to Miyamoto, and I won't like lay out what we talked about or anything, but he was just really charming and really humble. And like the main standout of the interview was like, you've always been compared to like the Disney of games, and now you have a theme
Direct
park.
comparison.
Like, how do you feel about that? And he was like, yeah, people call me the Spielberg, people call me like the Disney. I don't like it. I'm Miyamoto. And I was
Hell
like,
yeah,
hell
you
yeah.
are.
you
You're
are.
Miyamoto, baby.
Yeah.
Don't you forget.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
I love that, Tam. Well, thank you again for this. That is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to go to Super Nintendo World
Yeah.
myself. I'm going to give you guys a real quick word from our sponsors. When we get back, it's time for the topic of the show. Shout out to Shady Rays for sponsoring this episode. Look how cool I look. You too can look this cool. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered from the sun to the slopes with premium polarized shades, customizable snow goggles, and so much more. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. They'll also provide 10 meals to fight hunger in America with every order and have donated over 20 million meals to date. That's fantastic. There's no risk when you shop with Shady Rays. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for y'all listeners and watchers right now, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the new year. You can go to shadyrays.com and use code KindaFunny for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. These are 5-star rated by over 200,000 people. Again, that's shadyrays.com. Use the code KindaFunny. Shout out to Honey for sponsoring this episode. Honey is the easy way to save when shopping on your iPhone or computer, and thanks to Honey, manually searching for coupon codes is a thing of the past. And we all know there's nothing better than the feeling of saving money. Honey is the free shopping tool that scours the internet for promo codes and applies the best one it finds to your cart. When you check out, the Honey button appears, and all you have to do is click Apply Coupons. You'll wait a few seconds, you see the fun little dancing guy. Honey searches for coupons, and it finds finds you the best ones. And then you just watch the prices drop. We here at Kinda Funny have been using Honey for years, and it's helped us save thousands on tech, costumes, food, you name it. Honestly, I just love how easy it is to just set and forget and save. That's the best part. Honey doesn't just work on desktops, it works on your phone too. You just activate it on Safari on your phone, you save on the go. If you don't already have Honey, you could be straight up missing out. You can get PayPal Honey for free at joinhoney.com/kindafunny. That's joinhoney.com/kindafunny. So here is the topic of the show, everybody. On Kinda Funny Games Daily, you can write in with your topics by going to kindafunny.com/KFGD. Right?
Of course.
Your questions, your comments, your concerns, all of that. And every once in a while, we get some really good reader mail. So good that we're like, we're going to turn this into a Gamescast topic. And that's exactly what's happening here. So Jake Bakes Cakes is one of the more iconic KFGD question writer inners, right?
Correct.
They always give us some good topics. We end up going on for a while.
Do you think they got a rivalry with Manny Bacon Boy Sanchez?
Potentially. You know, the cakes.
Bakes cakes in the sound. Yeah, you never know.
They don't like each other.
It's a big rivalry.
But Jake's Bakes Cakes inspired others like J-Maz to write in with similar questions to get us going and conversating. This question is, inspired by some of Jake Bakes Cake's questions, I thought we could play a game. Since it's not only review season, but also kind of prediction season, I was wondering how you think the next non-DLC installment or game from different PlayStation studios will review compared to the last game. Better, worse, or the same. And then he gave a list of some of the upcoming Sony titles we know about, and me and Bless did that on Games Daily. I want to take that idea and expand it to not just PlayStation things, and not even necessarily talk about will it review better, more just a gut. Will it be better? Will it be worse? What do we think? What do we want to add to that? What do we kind of expect some of these things will be?
This.
You know what I mean? We don't need to get as detailed or not detailed as we want to about all these things. But I have a list here of all the big sequels, and some of these aren't even sequels. They might just be follow-ups from a studio. So it won't always be is number 2 going to be better than number 1? Sometimes it might be, will Starfield be better than Elder Scrolls or Fallout or something like that. So could be kind of fun. But I want to start off with the ones coming this year, specifically the ones that have confirmed release dates. So going kind of in that order, the next big one, Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
It's got to be better
Than Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So you're confident coming out swinging. It's got to be better. When you say gotta, do you mean, oh, it's going to be, or it has to be, or else it's going to be a problem?
I think a little bit of both, but I believe that it's going to be. Like, I Jedi Fallen Order, I think it was a very good game. I really enjoyed that game, but I think that is it feels like such a, let's set the template for what this franchise could be going forward, right? Like, you have the good Souls-inspired design, right? But Sekiro-inspired design, even though I think it came out the same year as Sekiro. You have that. You have some of the Metroidvania-ish type level design, but then you also just have this really good, really solid story, right? This really good, really solid single-player Star Wars experience. I think there's so much that they lay out in Jedi Fallen Order, pretty much most of which can be improved upon, right? Like, I remember playing this game at launch and really enjoying it, but having things like, oh man, this game doesn't run that great. Like, this game is a little bit buggy for a AAA game coming out at launch. I know that stuff has gotten better as we've gotten new gen ports and all that stuff, but you know, they delayed the game recently, and I think that's a good sign toward, hey, we don't want to have that happen again. Like, let's try and get this right the first time as opposed to having to update over time. I think you have that. I think you have the things that they've talked about in terms of some of the design of the levels being a bit more open and explorable, and a bit more like, hey, no, you are exploring this level more, right? We have more space to work with. I think some of that is probably improved by the power of next gen, right? Like, we're on the PS5 and Xbox Series X versus the PS4 and Xbox One. And even just looking at the trailer, man, like, for me, the thing that really sold me was the Game Awards trailer, of seeing what this game looks like in action, let alone hearing or reading through the IGN first stuff and then hearing Barrett talk about it because he's been watching the gameplay videos. Everything about it just seems better on every single level. And it's hard for me to imagine that this comes out any lesser than Jedi Fallen Order.
100% agree. Yeah, this is gameplay wise. I think it's going to be extremely similar to the changes we saw going from Horizon 1 to 2, going from God of War 1 to Ragnarok. It's all about hashtag lessons learned, Tim. All right, like, you already had a very, very solid formula, and now how do we remove the stuff that maybe wasn't so great, and how do we add and implement on the stuff that was really a big hit? And immediately we're seeing in that trailer that we just saw, grapple sort of movement, like midair dashes. I don't remember there being a whole lot of midair dashes, which you add that and you got a Game of the Year contender on your hands, Tim. But also just everything with like, I think so much of what Fallen Order was like getting the combat to feel good enough while also trying to tell a really meaningful story. And now it's like, I feel like the combat team is like, now let's go. Now all the ideas we had that we couldn't really fully implement in Fallen Order, let's all put that shit in order right here. We saw the dude slowing down time, grabbing the stormtrooper and putting the stormtrooper's body into the floating lasers. Like all of that stuff just looks so sick. And yeah, I think this is going to be like 100% a better experience and a better like Metacritic rated game as well.
Yeah, I think, like echoing what they said, I think that laying the foundations was great for them because they had a solid game and it was very obvious from a design technical perspective what needed to be improved or added or tweaked to make it a better gameplay experience. I think from a gameplay side, I think Respawn is smart enough as creators and developers to plug those holes, for want of a bit of a phrase, but I think because of that, there's going to be way more of a focus on the narrative and characterization. And if there's anything that perhaps lets it down, I think it will come from there more than gameplay. Yeah. I think there's going to be greater scrutiny on it because one, that will be kind of the thing that is most new from a kind of immediate perspective because obviously it's built on the foundations of an older game. So it's going to feel quite similar in a lot of ways. It'll have tweaks and stuff. So more of the focus is going to be on the new stuff, which is the story, the characters, the worlds, the environments. And that stuff needs to be kind of top tier for it to kind of not catch a bit of heat for that. On top of that, Star Wars, I'm about to catch some heat myself. Star Wars has been a bit up and down lately. And I think that obviously, Mandalorian's back.
Andor was
the one, the thing that people kind of really said was amazing. So we're in a situation now where people really need Star Wars to be good and hit that level now because Andor has like pushed it higher and Mandalorian excitement is way higher. But also there's more questionable Star Wars content than there is good right now. So I think people are going to be quite on edge to get something that's closer to Andor and Mandalorian. And if it isn't, they're going to be way more vocal about it, even if it is like a vocal minority. I think they're going to be way louder about it because Star Wars fans are vocal and also they're in a point right now where they're like, it's hitting. If something comes along that makes it not hit, you're letting the team down. So I think there's going to be, like I said, a great amount of scrutiny on the story and characters and that kind of stuff. But from a gameplay perspective, I'm confident in it.
And even not comparing it to the other mediums, right, that have been shaky, I think something for me personally, like I really love the story for Fallen Order. God, I have to pause because I get Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order mixed up now. And it's such a personal story. And my fear is that they're going to do the thing that they always do with Star Wars is let's get super big now and like let's expand and do this whole like universe building. And my fear is that they kind of lose that smaller, more heartfelt story that they had in the first one. So yeah, I agree. Technically, I think it's going to be definitely a bigger improvement and probably like a more fun game because of that. But story wise, I'm still a little worried about where we're going.
Yeah, I think that my gut tells me it's going to be better overall, and I think that we will review it higher overall. And I think when I look back to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which was our KindaFunny's Game of the Year that year, I adored that game a lot. It was far from perfect, and I think that some of the things I loved most about that game were how well it nailed the Jedi side of Star Wars, and was fun combat, but it had elements I loved from Metroid Prime, elements I loved from Uncharted, elements I loved from so many different games kind of put together into one thing. It also had elements I don't love about Metroid Prime and Uncharted, like the sliding or the map and things like that. So I feel like they're definitely going to fix those. I don't expect to get as many sliding sections in this game. I think that even in what we saw in the trailer, some of the grappling looks a lot more fun to control and controllable than it was in the first game of kind of like trying to force grab the vines or whatever the hell. That stuff just wasn't fun, and it looks fun here. But my two biggest concerns for the new one are it being too open from a gameplay perspective, where I liked the smaller levels. When they got bigger in Fallen Order, I kind of felt like we were getting lost a lot. Traveling from one place to another was a lot more difficult. They said they're adding fast travel mounts and all that. I don't know that that's the solution to the problem I have with it, so I'm a little hesitant there. And then, yeah, story-wise, the first one was so great, and the surprise moments it had were impactful. And in order to do that, you got to raise the stakes and go higher and more. And that's kind of where Star Wars starts to fall apart, I think. So we'll see. I'm hopeful, but I do think at the end of the day, it's going to be a real good time.
Plus, I think the first one was punching above its weight with visuals and everything they wanted to try to get the game to do at launch, and that's why we dealt with I dealt with a shitload of bugs and bad performance problems. And obviously, whenever a new game comes out, you always have an updated engine and new updated lighting models, and everything starts to look better. But we just have more capable hardware now. So
God damn,
holy shit!
They still, even with the next gen patch for Fallen Order, Wookiees still look so fucking bad.
Damn, that
Jesus.
looks a little
I
too
assume-
much.
Looks like PS2.
I really thought this was Knights of the Old Republic or something.
Yeah, like sweater is
Yeah.
I don't like that. It also looks like me.
God, I hope we,
I'm not a fan of
I
that.
hope we get greasy money, baby. As long as we get greasy money,
We get that greasy
that's all,
money.
yeah, that's
Gotta
all I
love
need.
it. Next up, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Will it be better, worse, or the same as Breath of the Wild? Tam,
Ooh.
start us off.
So I'm using precedent for this, and I'm gonna probably put it. I think it's gonna be like quite poetic in a way. It's gonna be quite reflective of Ocarina and Majora.
Mhm.
I think that's gonna be where we're at. Where I think Ocarina was a revolutionary game, right? And it was like a monumental moment in game design and Nintendo's history. And I think Breath of the Wild 1 is equivalent to that in a lot of ways. Like it's Breath of the Wild definitely has its issues, but in terms of impact and popularity, it was on par with what Ocarina did in its time. Majora obviously followed up, and it was a very different, very divisive kind of game. I think it was a considerably more interesting experience, but it definitely had its detractors as well because of the whole time loop system and the kind of like the complexities of playing that game was very different from Ocarina of Time, which felt more easy to jump into, if you know what I mean. I think that it's going to be very similar. I think it's going to review well. I think around the same being it got a lot of 10s and 9s. I think it'll probably be more 9s and 8s because it is kind of reusing a lot of the foundation of Breath of the Wild. I think it's going to be interesting to see whether the rest of the stuff is as divisive as Majora. I think that's going to be something that people talk about a lot, the kind of world, the story, that kind of stuff. And I don't know, maybe I'm about to say something stupid, but like the story wasn't a major thing for me of Breath of the Wild. Like I could take it or leave it. Like I barely engaged with it. It was more the gameplay for me. I think this time there's going to be a more concerted effort to have a story and tell a story, and it definitely feels like that here. Obviously, there was a narrative in the original game, but it was also kind of loose in a lot of ways. I think this is going to be a more directed and driven story. And again, just like with Jedi Fallen Order, kind of how it's received depends on the strength of that story. I think it's going to be pretty good because they've got a lot of interesting things that they're setting up here, and I'm excited to see where that goes. So I think it's going to review not as high as Breath of the Wild because that was a revolutionary breath of fresh air kind of moment, but still very high. 9s and 8s, I'd say.
Bless.
Yeah, I tend to agree for the most part, right? I'll still even think 9s and 10s, but maybe more 9s than even a Breath of the Wild got compared to the amount of 10s. I think it's that tough thing of trying to follow up something that was revolutionary and something that felt so fresh. Going from Skyward Sword, which is a game that a lot of people didn't love as much as when you think of Prime Zelda, right? Like I would say Skyward probably falls a bit lower on people's Zelda's list. Following that up with Breath of the Wild, which again is ground up, has a different, I'd say more fleshed out art style, has even like narrative stuff where, you know, I agree that the narrative in Breath of the Wild was a bit more thin, right? I was there more so for the gameplay, but I'll even say like upon starting Breath of the Wild and playing through it, I was a bit more engaged than my time playing Skyward Sword. And then you get into the gameplay, and yeah, the gameplay felt like just hey, let's kick the door open on what Zelda can be and really expand on even how we define puzzles and dungeons and like the way we look at that. And I think that worked so well, and I think that hit so hard because we weren't expecting them to go that hard with it. Coming off of Breath of the Wild, we are expecting, we know what to expect, right? We have this expectation of, all right, we know what shrines are. We know what an open world looks like in this structure. Like, we know that this is the sequel to Breath of the Wild. So like they're kind of teeing us up for something that is way more of a direct follow up. Like we know that's what that's going to be. How do you surprise and wow people with something that is laid out on what it's going to be, right? I think that's the biggest challenge. And on the review side, I don't think that's as big of a deal just because, like, I don't think reviewers are going to knock it because it's not something fucking crazy and different. But I do think from the way that we receive it as an audience in terms of how we look at groundbreaking or how we look at something that defines the medium, it's almost impossible for it to have that same level of impact. So I think with that, right, like, there's a big chance for me that it lives in Breath of the Wild's shadow. And that said, for me, that doesn't do anything in terms of removing my excitement. I'm still all the way over the moon in terms of how excited I am for Tears of the Kingdom.
I think Nintendo probably wants that.
Yeah.
Like, they're probably like, yeah, if we can get it to as close to Breath of the Wild as we can, and people are like, oh, it's great, but it's not as good as Breath of the Wild, I think they're probably like, all right, cool. Like, we changed the game with Breath of the Wild.
100%.
So it's like, if we're close to that again, sweet.
Yeah. I think reviews-wise, in terms of Metacritic, I see it hitting either the same or maybe like a point or two below on Metacritic. I don't think it's going to be a drastic gap.
It's interesting because having just done God of War and then Ragnarok and having that conversation of like, it was God of War 2018 was such a revolution for the franchise. How can the sequel live up to that? Can it? Whatever. And for a lot of people, myself included, it did, and I do think that is a little bit different where it's on any day I can pick one or the other and make arguments for why it's better. And that's a place I want to be. And then I kind of think that's where we'll end up here with Tears of the Kingdom, where it'll be fairly split. I don't think there'll be a unanimous decision on which one's better. So I tend to say same, I guess, for this. But I do think that Breath of the Wild, different than God of War, has the chance to be more similar to a Portal and Portal 2 situation, where Portal is this revolutionary thing that no one's seen before. And then Portal 2 just took everything that was great about it, added things that were missing, and we're just like, hey, here's just like the definitive version of that. And to me, a lot of that is just the story and the hype connecting in Breath of the Wild. Like, Breath of the Wild had really hype moments, but I don't think it had the setup for those hype moments. And like at the end of the game, scaling the castle with the music playing, it was fucking great. When you eventually get the Master Sword, like all that stuff was awesome. But I think that because the way that it was more lore based as opposed to plot based, I think that some of those moments didn't hit as hard as they could. And I think that they can do that in what we've seen in Tears of the Kingdom. If the flow of it is what I expect it to be, and unlike Breath of the Wild, which was mainly focused on flashbacks in the past for the story, if it's more dealing with the present, I think that it could be Portal 2 to Portal 1 levels.
Yeah. And I think to that point too, Tam mentioned that there are things that Breath of the Wild could do better. And I think goes back to the Jedi Fallen Order conversation a little bit of, yeah, like I do think that you could maybe tackle dungeons better in Tears of the Kingdom. Like I enjoyed the shrines a lot, but from the Divine Beast, I still felt like there was something lacking at the end of the day. When you take those and you compare them to even more of the classic Zelda dungeons, like I still look at Twilight Princess as the collection of my favorite Zelda dungeons. And I think you can. What was that?
You're a man of taste.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, God, the fucking winter dungeon in Twilight Princess is special, and I think you might be able to capture something like that in Tears of the Kingdom if that's something that they're looking at, right? How do we take what we did with the shrines and take that, put some of that effort, and put that into making these full-fledged, longer, maybe more unique, inspired dungeons? What if instead of having 4 Divine Beasts, we had a snow dungeon, or we had a dungeon that is themed after these crazy concepts like you've had in previous Zelda? I think that's a place where maybe you can look at. There are small things and divisive things like weapon degradation that people are very split on, right? Like, I don't mind it, but I could see them maybe tuning that a little bit to make it a bit more tolerable for people that didn't like it, right? And maybe that does help out a bit. On the opposite side of something that might work against it is we now live in a post-Elden Ring world. And I talk about how Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time, probably between that, Mario 64, and Persona 4. Elden Ring, in terms of open world game innovation, like for me, there are monumental games that come through and for me change my perception of that genre. And like I look at things like GTA, I look at things like Fallout or Skyrim and those games, right? For me, Breath of the Wild is one of those, and then the one after Breath of the Wild is Elden Ring. Like Elden Ring, playing through that game felt like hey, we learned a lot from Breath of the Wild, now let's make it better. Like, how do we inject fucking cool ass lore and dope ass boss fights and dope ass details and like all the dope explorable environments, and like have it be like a overworld, underworld kind of thing. Like Elden Ring really goes for it in a lot of the similar ways that Breath of the Wild went for it, and I think takes that shit further. And I think now that we have that game out, looking at Tears of the Kingdom, you got to compare it directly a little bit. And I think I could see that if Tears of the Kingdom doesn't bring the stuff, I could see that being a way in which maybe it falls on the review scale.
Andy Cortez.
Everything y'all said.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's about the same if they don't add dungeons. If what this ends up being is just the Death Stranding sort of collector's edition or whatever they're what do they call it? Director's cut, where in the director's cut you get more options for traversing the world. Like if all we're getting in this game is Breath of the Wild plus your ability to build machines that help you fly and drive on the ground, I don't think that's enough, and I don't think big story moments are important or are going to hit for the wider audience like me or Tam, who didn't really care a whole lot about the story. It's kind of give or take. Like what made this a 10 out of 10 for me was the world and how you interact with it, and where Elden Ring killed it with open world design. Zelda's open world was insanely special because of how all of the elements and physics systems kind of interplayed with each other. So I think if you keep, I don't want to see this. Obviously, we know there's like probably gonna be shrines and stuff. Keep the shrines one thing, make dungeons another thing, make them sprawling, and give us a couple of checkpoints here and there, and a couple of mini bosses, and then the big boss that you fight at the very, very end. I found the Divine Beast to be pretty lacking in those experiences, like compared to other Zelda experiences. Still pretty neat overall, but I just don't think it was anywhere near as special as like fighting through a grueling 2-hour session of going through a dungeon and getting lost and getting frustrated here and there, but then having big breakthroughs. Like that's the type of shit I want in this game.
And like enemy variety as
Yeah.
well. Like I
Lights.
played a little bit. Yeah, like fighting like 4 different versions of Ganon over again. It's like those were cool in the moment and figuring out like again like the physics-based stuff and how to fight them. But then like visually, it's just like I don't know. It doesn't give me the the bongo moment from Ocarina of Time and stuff like that. Where you can get really cool and weird with enemy variety, which we've seen with the recent trailer, right? Like not boss moments, but just like how they might be shaking things up with enemies. Like hopefully that's a tease of maybe what's to come.
I want to move on to Street Fighter 6, baby.
I mean, the only place to go is up.
It's only up, right?
Yeah.
Like I the only thing holding me back is how much the single player stuff is gonna stink, and if that's going to affect the review.
I think it's going to be good.
You think so?
I think that single player is going to be good. And compare it to the single players that Street Fighter has had, it's definitely going to be more. Like it's
But more doesn't mean better, and that's my concern.
if you think about it, like Street Fighter 4 single player was not great. Street Fighter 5 was definitely not great. Like it was just very thin. This feels like they've at least, if they just create a world where they string together these fights, that's automatically better than what it was before. But I think they're going one step further. I don't know for sure, but like I feel like they're hiding a lot of things about this single player that we aren't aware of yet. Like we've seen Metro City and plenty of that. And I think it might be a bit bigger than we realize. I'm waiting for them to be like, also we've got these other cities. Because like that's what Street Fighter is, right? Like you're world warriors. You're traveling the world. You're going different places. Like how do you reconcile like going from Metro City to like Blanca stage in Brazil or something like that? I think there might be something else going on there. But fundamentally, like it looks like it's going to be a little more engaging at the very least than here's a crappy cutscene or a crappy like storyboard that they've thrown together to string these matches together. So at the very least, I think that will be good.
Yeah, and also make sure that it's judged against the way Street Fighter V was judged at launch in 2016. Like it was 7 years ago that Street Fighter V came out, and again, as somebody who just loosely followed the FGC, who has friends that are really, really into the FGC, I know that everybody's reception was like, "What the what? This is what we waited for." Like after all the hype with Street Fighter 4, this is what released, right? I know that it took 7 years to get Street Fighter 5 to where it is now, to where it actually became a really popular fighting game, and it took a
Content
long
rich.
Yeah, it took a long time for people to feel the same way about it in the way that they kind of immediately felt about 4. We have to judge it against the Street Fighter of how that launched Street Fighter 5 as opposed to like how long it took a game to actually get good after 7 years, you know what I mean?
I've played a lot of this game already, obviously because I've been at events where it is, and when I played Street Fighter 5, I could feel something was off, and when I played Street Fighter 6, I could feel that thing was back. And that
You can have game mode on the TV. You gotta,
you take motion smoothing
input
off.
lag, yeah.
Yes. The moment I started playing that game, like I was like, yes, they got it. They figured it out. Whatever it was, they found the source again, and it feels good to play at the very least. Whether it has longevity remains to be seen, but like just system-wise, I was like sitting there experimenting, figuring out how they interact, peeling back the layers of it. I remember I was like one of the first people to play Street Fighter 6, and people were tweeting at me being like, can you see if this works? And I was doing it and replying to them. Like the community was like fired up about this. And that is something that I haven't seen since Street Fighter 4 came back, which was following a long like absence of Street Fighter. So when that came back, people were like wild about it. And now it feels similar. We've had Street Fighter for a while, but it's been kind of like a thing that has been, reforged into something that's okay
and
now.
console exclusive on PlayStation, like locked in a way that it shouldn't have been.
This is immediately like, I don't want to say any definitively, but I am confident in Street Fighter 6.
I am confident that this will be better than 5, that it'll review better, that we'll all enjoy it more and all of that. I'm questioning the single player.
It seems like just based off of all of these tests that it's already more loved than Street Fighter 5 ever was.
That's the thing is, like, when they announced Street Fighter 6, I immediately started picking up and playing a lot of Street Fighter 5, and then I played the beta at Summer Game Fest, and then they've done a couple of closed betas since then, and I've hopped into those closed betas, and I don't want to go back to Street Fighter 5 after playing those betas. I'm like, I'll just wait till Street Fighter 6 gets here because it's so fun. And over the time I've become less and less of an arcade mode person when it comes to fighting games. Like, I think part of that is Mortal Kombat figured out a story mode so well. And with the story mode that they're adding for Street Fighter 6, I think for me what matters is that they're giving me the content to interact with, right? Give me an interesting way to interact with the world and engage in fights, and that's all I need. I think the core fight gameplay is so fun that yeah, like I don't need the open world city thing to be perfect, just as long as it ushers me into like a progression system that is fun to chase after and like
feeling hype about the next fight.
Yeah. Me being like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna go fight Chun-Li now. All right, I got to do whatever weird objectives they give me.
That's my problem. I mean, again, I don't want to harp on too long about this, but like, I'm not seeing anything that leads me to believe that it's going to be more fun than just hitting down on a menu and hitting X for the next fight. Because like, I think you're going to be just like in a very like PS3 era way, running down linear corridors, and hey, I lost 5 chickens. Can you go collect them? And then you have to just like haphazardly run around to get him before you could face Chun-Li. I just hope it's not that.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks like it's going to be that.
Yeah. I can understand
Shoot
that.
5 hoops of basketball. I'm like, all right, I'm
All right.
If it's like going one-on-one Sean from Street Fighter 3 at basketball, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do that. Let's go.
But I think honestly, like I think where it's going to be at though, in terms of how people receive it, are going to be more so in the fighting mechanics though. Of course, like Metacritic is Metacritic, and I'm sure that can shift up and down. But I think in terms of wide reception, how people are really going to judge it by, like it's going to be in how the PvP plays, and already I think they've already surpassed
Easy.
SF5.
Diablo 4. I don't have shit to say about this. Do you?
It's another one that I've played, and it was the same. Where like I played Diablo 3, I liked a lot of Diablo 3, and I was like, yeah, I get it. It's Diablo. I played the preview or a beta, I think it was, or a little bit of Diablo. I think I did anyway. I can't remember what phase it is, but like it was.
There have been a lot of
There's
like
been
alphas
and that
betas
kind
and
of stuff,
everything.
closed beta, and I was like, okay, this feels like Diablo 2, and that is that's the best thing you can say about it right now. It's got like the polish of Diablo 3 and like some of the systems of Diablo 3 that they added to it over the many years. But in terms of like the darkness and the feeling of it, it felt good. Yeah. I think it's going to review better.
Yeah, I think hype is through the roof for this, and I think it's going to live up to it. Just based on hashtag lessons learned, Tim. Like I think Diablo 3 came out, and still a lot of people loved it. A lot of people fucked with Diablo 3, but the hardest of hardcore of that audience was missing the sort of like Tam mentioned, the darkness of it, the evilness of it all. And I think that this is kind of like doubling down on all that just to help with environments and stuff. But I do think that this game just seems to be like any time that there's any sort of Twitter thing happening with it, every one of our peers is just popping off about Diablo 4 and wanting to get in and wanting to play this new beta, wanting to get into this new testing. I think this will definitely rate higher than Diablo 3.
It's interesting how it can kind of compare to Street Fighter 6, where 5 was kind of exclusive to PlayStation and that limited it, whereas 4 was, I think, a much bigger success for Street Fighter, and like it was very much a like re-entry point for Street Fighter as a franchise and fighting games, honestly. Like it really kind of brought them back there into like the mainstream appeal of genres in video games. But with Diablo, it's interesting because Diablo 2 was such a mega hit on PC, but didn't really have any console presence. And then Diablo 3, even though it wasn't the fan favorite game, it's definitely like the widest appeal game because of how many people, the Greg Millers of the world, playing it on console for the first time. So I think Diablo 4 is kind of like best of both worlds all together, where it's like the Diablo 2 fans being like, oh, no, you thought 3 was good, wait for this. But then also the Greg Millers that played 3 are going to play 4.
Yeah.
So they just need to deliver, which it seems like they're going to.
They really figured out Diablo on consoles. Like the Reaper of Souls, like it's still available. Like that, they made that work, and it was like, oh, this is genuinely awesome on consoles, which is many, many years ago. If you had told me pre-Diablo 3 that there's going to be a console version of it, I'd say there's no way that works. But it does. And like if they're taking all those lessons learned into 4, it's going to be a big deal. Yeah.
The only Diablo game I played a lot of was Diablo 1 on PlayStation 1. That's why I don't play Diablo anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad one. You know,
I just never want, every time I would walk by the box set at Sam's Club, I'd see Diablo 2, or maybe it was Diablo 1. No, it was more of like, I didn't want my mom to think the games were like demonic. Like, you know, like,
these aren't video games.
Yeah, like they heard me listen to a System of a Down song where it said, "What angels deserve to die," and my dad was like, "Miko, you can't be listening to that. That's bad."
Leave the angels alone.
Let's move on.
That was my parents with Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, they did not like the Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Wait, that's so fucking funny.
When they saw they were monsters, they're like, "No, we're not doing that."
Why is this magician got titties?
Oh yeah. Oh man.
We got Final Fantasy 16.
That is gonna
better than 15.
Absolutely gonna pop off.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be huge. And like we had our preview, you had Chaim on this. Everything I've heard is like it's great. It is so good.
I can't wait.
I'm so excited.
I'm desperate. Like the only thing that like how the story comes together is going to be interesting. I think it's going to have a good story.
See, the thing is though, the story's a huge thing. I mean, that's the big thing I want to be good the most, and I'm hopeful for, and whatever. And a little trepidation is on right now from talking to Michael. However, there's no way it's not at least as good as 15's story.
Yeah, even 15's story, like 15 isn't my favorite Final Fantasy. Story's still interesting though.
The thing about I love the story. I hate how they do it. Like the execution is D tier, I think.
I played that game and I thought the story was whatever, and then I reluctantly watched Kingsglaive. The story in that is absolutely popping off. It is really good. I was like, why don't you do this as the game?
The fucking game.
Crazy good. Like in comparison to the 15 story, I was like, this is way better. But I think like the team behind this is, I mean, the MMO has got the best Final Fantasy storyline in many, many years. So if it's that same team, and it is, like, I think that it's fair to raise your expectations for the story. And the setup already is pretty interesting. You know, these Guardian Forces summons icons as like basically allegories for nuclear weapons in this like political struggle between. It's like really cool. Very, very clever and very, very cool. And it's like, oh, they want to do like a Game of Thrones style thing. I'm like,
yes.
I think it's going to definitely be better than 15, but will it hit the high bar of Final Fantasy stories, which is, you know, the peak is obviously 10.
I love you. I love you so much. Let's go, baby.
The only thing that worries me is like, is the theme going to be as good as Stand By Me by, was it Florence the Machine? Yeah. Like, I never played Final Fantasy 15, but I did listen to that a lot. That was fire.
To this day, a lot. I love that.
I don't know if there's a game I'm looking forward to more this year.
Yeah,
like
it's
really?
definitely.
I mean, dude,
it's up there
I'm
for
so
me.
hyped on it. Yeah.
I think just technically it's going to be a goddamn masterpiece when you have it on your TV and it's looking gorgeous and all the... maybe this is the one I buy an OLED for, y'all. Maybe this is the one I finally buy an OLED TV for.
Final Fantasy VII Remake won our Game of the Year 2020. Do you think Final Fantasy 16 gets it in 2023?
I think it's very unlikely, but But I mean, there's a lot of us are going to play it, and if it's
We're
as
some
good as
nerds.
we expect,
What's the
it's
game
gonna
that
be,
everybody's going to play the most at KindaFunny? Breath of the Wild.
there's going to be a whole
Or
bunch of
Tears of the Kingdom.
Spider-Man 2, Breath of the Wild. Like,
Oh
there's
my
a lot of games.
Let me
that
tell you
we're
about
all gonna
Starfield,
play.
all right?
Oh my god. I think that this will definitely rate higher than Final Fantasy 15, and I'm just so excited for the darker, more sinister, evil shit. Like, I understand Final Fantasy games need some whimsy, and that's what Michael Hyam was like. Oh, give us the whimsy. I enjoy whimsy every once in a while. I really, really want like this little kid getting blood in his face from the dude getting slashed in front of him. Give me more of that shit, dude.
The only thing that annoys me about Final Fantasy 16 of everything I've seen so far is this motherfucker's name is
I
Clive.
fucking can't deal with
I
it.
cannot
man.
deal with that shit, man.
I really can't, man. Like,
I hate. So I always
Clives,
think
I stand up for you out there. For every Clive listening to this podcast, I'm with you.
it reminds me of when I was like in school and I was doing acting classes and drama and that kind of stuff, and we'd come up with this elaborate story and everyone would be assigned a role and actors and that kind of stuff, and then the character names would come out and it'd be like, your name is John, and I'm like, what the do I look like a John to you? Like, give me something better. Like, this
I don't know
dude's
if I don't know if anybody looks like a Clive though. You know.
I mean, like, give this guy a
whatever this guy looks like, I
it's
don't
not
like.
Clive. Yeah. It's like, oh, come on. Like, Ramza is a name from Final Fantasy's history. Tidus, Squall, Cloud,
Orenthal,
Oren,
some shit,
yeah.
You know
and
what I
then-
mean?
Give
We've
it a
also got-
Leon. Just give me a fucking Leon.
Yeah, we got a buddy Clive. All right, man.
Noctis is a cool name, man.
Noctis
Noctis
is
is a
fucking
great
dope,
name,
dude.
yeah.
You and Alaska.
Prompto? Come on.
Come on. All right. Anyways, moving on. Marvel Spider-Man 2.
Interesting.
It's tough, right? Because like, what do you do? Like, they did Spider-Man, and it was great, and we loved
You
so
take
much
away the
about
Mary
it.
Jane sneaking part.
That's the thing. You take those things.
You make
out.
the open world stuff less less lame, I'd say. Like
busy work.
when I talk about the open world, like the open world side quests, like
Yeah.
not going to shut down satellites and having to stay beneath the ceiling of whatever. Like there was a lot of really lame ass side quests, man. Like, and I just kind of really enjoyed swinging around the world, and the rest of fighting any sort of baddies that were around the buildings started to get very samey for me. I think there are definite ways to improve upon that, and I have full confidence that they will
Yeah.
improve upon that.
You do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting because I think Insomniac are an incredible studio, obviously. Like, between the first Spider-Man game and then Miles, they've like...
I disagree. Okay.
between those two games is great. But also, which Insomniac are we getting? Because they're also making Wolverine. Like, I'm not sure which team is on this. Not to say like everyone isn't there super, kind of like amazing, but like I feel like they need to do more with this. And I don't know if where that kind of like division of labor is. Can they really go hard on this one? I think from a gameplay standpoint, it's going to be solid. Like, even if you replicate the first Spider-Man, that shit was so fun. That like just doing that again is going to be amazing. But like, I wonder where they're going with. I think there's going to be a much darker story, and I think it's going to be a lot of risk in that. And I feel like if you go darker and you have this story, it's got to live up to at least the story of the last game, which is beloved by a lot of people. But like, there's some points of failure in the narrative that could be there. I think it's similar to what we said with Jedi. It's like mechanically, I think they know exactly what they need to improve. In design wise, I think they know the things that were kind of like letting the original down or like hampering it. And then it always going to rest on the story and character and that kind of stuff again. Yeah.
I was gonna say that I think they only have some points to lose because we've already seen an amazingly rendered New York.
Yeah.
And we've already swung around an amazingly rendered New York.
At least twice.
Twice, yeah. And there's not like, I think because of how great those games looked, and because those games came out on PC and looked even better, and we saw them in higher fidelity at higher frame rates, that I don't know how much room there is for improvement there that the general audience will be able to notice it. Of course, I'm going to watch a Digital Foundry breakdown on it and tell me where all of the shadows and shaders started getting improvements at. Where all the puddle improvements and the volumetric fog. But I think because those older games looked as incredible as they did, that wow factor might be gone now. And now how do you wow in the other areas? And that's going to be a tough task.
World of Warcraft?
I think the fidelity factor of like how good it looks and how good it can look. I don't think that's where you like really go ham and like separating Spider-Man 2 from Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales, just because like both of those games had PS5 versions as well.
Yeah.
Right. So like, how are you going to push that further? I'm sure this game will look marginally better, right? But I think really it's going to come down to a lot of design. You know, you make the Jedi Survivor versus Jedi Fallen Order comparison, right? And I think you even push that further from even like the gameplay of it, because I do think the gameplay, Spider-Man feels as Spider-Man can feel in these games. Like I don't think you can make the swinging feel any better.
Yeah,
I don't think you can make the punching feel any better. I think it will come down to like maybe world design and like mission design, like Andy was talking about, and then taking out all the flaws that people saw in Spider-Man 1, like the Mary Jane missions and like the weird puzzle science shit that you would do, and then even in Miles Morales, making the story feel bigger and more fleshed out, right? Like I think there are story improvements you can make. Spider-Man 1 had the weird last act where I won't spoil it, but like the last third of that game gets wild in a way that I don't think is great.
Fast.
Yeah, and I think if you hone that in, if you figure out pacing of the story better, and like you have characters like Venom in the trailer, and
sit with your villains more.
Yeah, sit with your villains more and develop them more, because you have Venom and then Hunter guy Craven. Those are dope ass villains to have.
Craven Moorhead.
Craven Moorhead, yeah.
God.
Tim, are you sure you want to say whatever you're about to say?
I'm gonna say, like, I think the combat is great, but I definitely feel like there's room for improvement. And I think here's my prediction.
Just shit talking. Just shit.
No. Here's my prediction. I like the combat in the original. Here's my prediction. You play as two Spider-Men at the same time.
That's the other thing I was gonna
At
mention.
the same time.
I think. Remember when Batman Arkham games, where you had the whole, you play as Batman, you kick enemy into the air, and then
it's like God of War
jumps in, and God of War style. I feel like you play as Peter and Miles at the same time.
No,
like
not
press
God of
circle, and then
War
like Miles
style.
does a
Yeah.
You're not switching between characters in God of War.
I don't think you'd switch between.
Yeah,
them.
I
think it'll be similar, where it's like you set up a combo with Miles, and Miles will jump in, or if you're playing as Miles, maybe you switch the character at some point, like,
or Miles is swinging off
Yeah.
hitting dudes as well, but then you have that one ability that then utilizes Miles to like freeze the dude, and then you hit him or whatever.
Because it feels like two villains, Craven and Venom, like feels like you, and they're both kind of like top tier villains for Spider-Man. Like I guess like Craven's not as big, but like I don't think
you don't get bigger.
you don't get bigger than Venom, and also I don't think you dispose of Craven in the same way that you do like Rhino or whatever in previous games. So I feel like having
Tom
that
Hardy.
duality of like two villains versus two superhero heroes, I think that's kind of our clue that you're going to be controlling two characters at the same time. Also, like from a development perspective, it makes sense because like they have that kind of knowledge with God of War as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, "Hey, how did you do this Atreus stuff? Mind telling us? Like we got a whole Spider-Man setup that we want to work on with that."
I know it's cheesy also, but like the game is called Spider-Man 2. Right? Like, I think there's something you can do with that in terms of, hey, Spider-Man 1 was Peter Parker's game. Spider-Man, oh, God damn it. Spider-Man also. But yeah, like we had
Spider-Man as well.
We had the Peter Parker game. We had the Miles Morales game in the debut trailer for Spider-Man 2. We saw them both, right, side by side. We saw the two masks. And I think that says something. I think that could be what you're talking about in terms of, what if we are controlling both at the same time? Or what if we're switching between characters?
If you're swinging alongside Miles and you press a button, and then you could like leap into the air and like grab Miles and throw him further, and like have each other's, like he can use his web to swing you around, and you
You're
can
literally describing No Way Home.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. Like that would be so good.
That would be awesome. And that's my thing. Even if they added all that, I think that at the end of the day, this is probably going to be the same. I think it's going to be an 8 out of 10. And I say that with Spider-Man being one of my most replayed and one of my most loved favorite games of all time. It's just fun. Like to this day, I'll boot it up and just swing around New York because it's fun to swing around New York. I love that even after I've 100%ed it, there's still random fucking goons that'll just pop up, and like you hear the cop car go by and you're like, I guess I'm going to take you motherfuckers out, and I fuck them up because I'm powered up. But I love that. And I as long as they just deliver more, I think it'll be good. I just really struggle to think it's going to be better. Like I think that because to me, the better would be the story, and you talking about the last third and like some of the villains, they kind of blew their load, I think, a little bit. And I don't have full faith that they're going to totally nail all those things in a way that I can say it's better. But I do think it's going to be just as good. And I think that the story in Spider-Man is one of the best Spider-Man stories ever. And I say that as somebody who thinks Spider-Man is the best superhero there is. I've read thousands of Spider-Man comics and watched almost all the shows. Like, I fucking love this character, and they really did it right.
The most exciting part of it is, I reckon, I mean, this is a very obvious thing. Wolverine will be in that game. I think this is the start of them setting up their universe. I think you'll have some connective tissue to the Wolverine game there. It makes too much sense.
You see Daredevil.
Oh my
That would be
God.
pretty good.
I'll pop for Daredevil. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Wolverine will be in a newspaper. I think you'll read a thing about like a guy in Canada and he has claws.
Yeah, maybe.
Do we know if Wolverine's in modern day? Also, is that like is he in the same time period?
I
as Spider-Man?
think in that trailer it was kind of. I think
Vague.
it was like a 70s or 80s thing, or
I know that doesn't really matter for Wolverine because
yeah,
man just be living.
yeah. He just
but
lives, bro.
He just lives
Forever.
you know?
Yeah.
World War II, doing stuff.
It makes
Stays
too much
around.
sense for them to not do it. Like, it has to happen.
I'm hyped, baby. Let's go. Andy, Hollow Knight Silk Song.
Oh man. I'm going to say that this is going to. No, there's no way it could rate higher than Silk Song than the original, because I think the original was such a kind of cool, eye-opening experience for a lot of people who wanted to try out a brand new Metroidvania that gave you sort of the same level of difficulties that you'd expect in a Souls-like. I don't think it rates higher than the original. I think that the original was so. I think this is going to suffer like what I was just mentioning. Spider-Man's going to suffer from, where it's like we've already seen this already. Like essentially, you're getting a new playable character. I think this is going to be, I've said it before, like a much better version of what we saw with playing as the King Knight expansion or the Plague Knight expansion for Shovel Knight. You're getting a lot of similar worlds, but new mechanics and new ways of moving around the world because you're playing as a completely different character. I don't think it rates as high, but I think it's still going to be kind of like Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild was 9s and a lot of 10s. I think this will be 8s and a lot of 9s.
I mean, I feel like you get a lot of extra mileage out of having a improved like map system out of it. And even if, for me, I'm like, the one thing I didn't like about Hollow Knight was that map system. It really pissed me off. Like and it's also why I dropped it. Like I've never finished that game despite enjoying it, just because I was like, this map system is tedious.
It was very tedious.
Yeah, it's annoying. And I feel like if they just, even if it has like the same kind of gameplay on that level and then a better map system and a little more discovery, that kind of stuff.
More quality of life.
Yeah,
sort of improvement.
I feel like that pushes it a bit higher even. But I reckon on par with currently. Also, at a certain point now, we're expecting some sort of twist in that gameplay, right? Like, it's been in development for so long that it feels like they have something extra beyond an equivalent of like an upside down castle, or like you play as another character on top of this, or something major that will be like, wow, this is why it took so long.
I don't know. I think that it just was the need to keep on growing what the product was, because I think its initial idea was that Silk Song was going to be a smaller sort of expansion, and then it just kind of outgrew, similar to what we had with what Cory Barlog talked about with Ragnarok, how that was supposed to be a sort of small thing, and then it kind of expanded and it was like way bigger than they thought it was going to be. I think that's why Silk Song is taking so long.
Yeah, I
would love that.
I think there's something more to it. Obviously, it's taking long because it's a small development team.
Yeah.
And they changed how it is, and like development is not easy, but I think there's a certain, I think there's a magic trick they're gonna pull with that we're not aware of yet.
I think it's gonna end up more like Cuphead DLC.
Yeah,
where it's like it was DLC, but like it was half a game, but it was like more than people expected, but not enough to be like a full on thing.
Has Hollow Knight Silk Song been pitched as a full game or as like a DLC expansion?
It's a full game.
Full
It's a full sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think at one point it was going to be just
it started off as a
yeah,
kind of like expansion almost,
which
and
is
then
why
it
people have been
ballooned.
talking about it for so long. Hollow Knight on PC, by the way, 87 on Metacritic and 90 on Switch.
Damn.
I do see your case though, Dan, that making those smaller quality of life improvements to make the experience a bit easier and less like worry more about the difficult bosses and difficult enemies, and don't worry so much about the toughness in getting around this world, because I got lost plenty. That's a hard game to stream. God damn. I would get lost and I'd be like,
I streamed it as well, and I was like, I can't do
I'd
that.
be like, this is a mistake.
This is hard for me. Like it was a blast in the boss fights because they're so intense and they're just so beautifully designed. not only just the enemy look and everything, but at what the game is asking of you mechanics wise. But man, it is tough to
rough.
kind of. It's easy to get lost, and especially with me and just getting distracted all the time, it's
Yeah.
really rough.
I made the same mistake with Metroid Prime, where like my first time playing this new version, I streamed it and I was like, "Oh, this is a mistake." I got 50 minutes into the stream, and after getting stuck for like the 8th time, I'm like, "No."
That's me with Destiny because I'm just doing the Fran Mirabella thing. Bless. I'm just in my
In the
menus, and
menus.
I love it. Like it's not even like a bad thing. I love tuning things, and it's just really tough to do.
I want to close out the show with one more, kind of taking all of 2023 into consideration. Starfield. Will it be better than? Now here's the thing. Bethesda's last game, Fallout 4.
This is
I'm not going to count 76.
Also 70s. Okay.
But I feel like in terms of like what this is, the follow up to, I would say Fallout 4. Is
I think-
it going to be better than Fallout 4? Tam?
I think it's in like too big to fail territory. Like they cannot have this game.
Just like
not-
Halo.
Let me tell you about Cyberpunk 2077.
That's a good point. Those are two very good points. But I think like I feel like even based on what we've seen so far, it's going to be a better game. Like Fallout 4 was more divisive than 3, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah,
100%.
So like,
more divisive.
because
I like that game too. A lot of people.
yeah, a lot of people.
I think it was the fact that like it came out and it was great, but it wasn't like. I think 3 I would say was to some extent revolutionary, at least for the franchise.
It felt, the problem was it felt quite plain after New Vegas as well. Like, because people always forget New Vegas, but like that is secretly the best Fallout of the new era. And after playing that, going into 4, it was a little more like expectations were super high, and it for some parts of it hit, for others it didn't. But I think like the divisive nature of Fallout 4 means that a good game has a very strong chance of being like, performing way better. I think this is already like, it's clear like it's more ambitious than Fallout ever was. It's clear that they have worked on the tech, which is going to go a long, long way. Fallout 4, like, despite being a better looking game than the previous Fallouts, still very much felt dated in a bunch of ways. In that classically Bethesda Game Studios way, that is like both charming and annoying. But this feels like it's kind of like built on new technology. They clearly have more ambition to it. I feel like it's going to perform way better. I think it's going to be received better as well.
Lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
Learned.
This is the game I'm most anticipating this year that I'm also the most scared about.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm so like excited and I'm so like curious and I want to play this game so bad, but I think
I
this
want it
has
to
the
be
biggest chance to not be great at the end of the day, and that is for a number of reasons, right? And I think the thing I keep coming back to is the big 3 when I think of when I think of Western RPGs, which would be CD Projekt Red, Bethesda, and Mass Effect, Anthem, BioWare. Yeah, they've all had big failures with their latest projects, and the further we go, the more I have the thought of, is it just impossible at this point to put out a big AAA expansive Western RPG, because whether it's expectation or whether it's budgets or whether it's technology is hard to keep up with because of the power of what we have and like trying to live up to all that. I don't know what the answer is, but it's been a while since we've gotten a fucking banger one of these. I played Fallout 4. I really enjoyed Fallout 4. I played Outer Worlds, less with scope and whatever, but I enjoyed that game a lot too. I'm hoping to get at least that level of enjoyment out of this, right? I played Cyberpunk and I enjoyed Cyberpunk. But like none of these are the next big step for like Western RPGs, and I don't think Starfield even has to be that. It just has to live up to what a Bethesda RPG is, right? It has to be solid. It has to be expansive. It has to have a story that is fire. It has to have a faction system that we fuck with, right? And like, I think they're going for that with a new IP that looks interesting, has this weird, different NASA kind of style to it. And I think has like a lot of promising things to it, but then also has other things where, we look at the gameplay and they get into some of the No Man's Sky, breaking down materials, like scanning type stuff. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, that's different. You look at the combat and it's first person shooter stuff. And it's like, okay, like this looks like a Bethesda game, right? Like this looks like something, but none of it so far has blown me away where I'm like, oh, let's freaking go. I can't wait for this. There have been like the sit downs that they've had talking with each other where Todd Howard and the crew is talking about like things like factions and things like story where I'm like, oh, okay, this does sound interesting, but I don't know. I'm so scared. Like I've not been completely sold on it yet, but I'm looking forward to it because it's Bethesda and I know what to expect with that.
I think the immersive nature of getting caught up in really awesome side quests is kind of what I need the most from Starfield. I feel like the main story, take it or leave it for me. Like, I may or may not care about the grander scale of what's happening in the main story. I just love in those moments, like in games like Outer Worlds or any other RPGs, where you just come across a really interesting NPC who asks something from you, and then you continue down that mission, and you're getting like the most intense dialogue, or just really like you're discovering. I'll never forget this one NPC in Outer Worlds. Asked me for something, and then I ended up finding out that this dude had abandoned all of his crewmates that he was telling me that they were like his family. And this dude left them because he needed to leave the planet but without them. And he felt really, really awful about it. But he's also a shitty person. And like, it's those moments of like, which side of humanity are you going to side with? Are you going to try to kill him because you know that he did wrong? Are you going to talk shit to him because you know he did wrong? Or are you going to sympathize with this broken person in front of you? Like, it's that sort of shit that I need from Starfield, and I really hope that they deliver on that front.
How do you think this launches in terms of how it runs? Because Bethesda, notorious for putting out big games that have a lot of bugs to them.
Lessons will not be learned.
It kind of depends on this. I feel like we're finally at this stage where they have something to prove, and they want to prove it. So like Creation Engine 2, I feel like they've probably done a lot of work to be like, let's get this as rock solid as we can, so we can finally stop hearing about how busted our games are. But it also, I'm not 100% clear on the scale of this game completely yet, because like, you know, there's exploration and planets and that kind of stuff, but like, how big is it? And the bigger it is, the more chance that, like, that it's going to start falling over itself. So like, we've got like planet stuff here and moving around, so it kind of really depends on that, and then the systems that are in place. I think it's going to be a better experience overall, but I also feel like it's going to have some of that classic jank.
Here's the thing, right?
Look at this Mass Effect scanning planets.
Yeah. From Tech Radar, according to the Starfield official gameplay reveal trailer, there are over 100 systems with over 1,000 planets, which are all
this game's busted. It's never working.
Which are all open for you to explore. And you got to imagine that a good amount of those are procedurally generated.
Yeah.
But then we get back into the No Man's Sky thing of like, is that going to be good content? Like, what does that look like? Am I going to those planets to mine materials so I can upgrade certain weapons and then go to the actual, what do they call unicorn planets, or like, I forget the name of it. There's a name for planets that, like, give birth to life.
The ones that are like...
I think it is a unicorn planet.
Unicorn planet?
Yeah, like what I'm hoping is, well, what I'm expecting, like you just mentioned, is that a lot of these are procedural, but I would love for some of these, even procedural ones, the ones that aren't extremely designed to at least have an important outpost that we need to visit with an important NPC, where the rest of the world may not be extremely handcrafted, but it still has some level of importance, and it isn't just running around looking for materials and scanning for a rare unobtainium or whatever.
I typed in Unicorn Planet on Google.
Is that a band?
What are you watching, man?
And I brought up
Fucking Charlie the Unicorn shit.
Planet Unicorn came up. Yeah, and it's this fucking animated internet video.
Goldilocks planets. Thank you.
That's what it is.
Michael says round robin.
That's what it is. I
Let's
love
just
it.
use his terms, then.
It's great. It's great.
I was close. You knew what I meant when I said Unicorn Planet.
Well, that's 2023, y'all. Tim, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you?
Thank you for having me. You can find me at GameSpot and Giant Bomb. I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/TimorH.
New season of Valorant.
Oh, let's go. Let's go. I'm always in there. Playing Counter-Strike 2, yeah. I'm down. I'm at TimorH on Twitter and Instagram as well, so come and follow me.
Yeah, go follow him, everybody, and then let us know in the comments below what lessons you've learned, okay? Or maybe not. Whatever you prefer. I'm not your dad.
Spider-Man.
I love you all. Goodbye.